A good strategy talks about entry and exit points. Without that, you should throw that strategy straight up in the bin, because a good strategy should tell you that this is your entry point. When you hit this, this is what you're supposed to see so that you can enter your trades. And in this episode, we're going to talk about using support and resistance to find entry and exit points. So stay tuned in this episode as we're going to talk about entry and exit points using support and resistance. So a small recap on previous episode. If you haven't watched it, I urge you to go back and watch our previous episode on support and resistance. But a small recap is the definition. In trading, these are price points where the price of a currency pair tends to find buying and selling pressure, potentially leading to price reversals or pause in a trend. That is the definition of support and resistance. And here we have a chart that shows support and resistance. This is just a recap from our first episode on support and resistance. If you haven't watched it, the link is in the description. Please go ahead and watch it so that this whole video makes sense. And I hope you watch this whole playlist from the beginning. So these are my support and resistance zones. And we talked about how support and resistance zones are created using supply, what we call supply and demand. So as you can see here, these are my price goes up like that and like that, right? It goes like that, like that, like that. And it, forgive my drawing, it's like that. So the upper point, we say it is the resistance because price is being resisted to go up, right? And the bottom part is the support. It's more like something is lifting something up to go up like that. So yeah, there is support and resistance. And yeah, that is my support and resistance. Let me remove this. Okay, so here we have a typical example of support of a resistance. As you can see, price is failing to break through that zone. It's more like a wall that is set up. Every time price tries to go, it's failing to break through that zone. It's failing to break through that zone. And it says here, notice how price fails to notice how the tails of the candlesticks penetrate through the resistance and still close below it. I hope you can see that. And if you watched the episode where we talked about types of candlesticks, you can see that these are what we called control shift candles on our resistance, and you should know what that is supposed to mean. And we also talked about market direction in our previous episode, where we said market direction creates higher highs when it's bullish and it creates lower lows when it's bearish. So this is just a little bit of a recap onto what we were talking about. What we have here, let's go back to this candle. We are trying to find entries now. We said if price is respecting our resistance level, right? We see what are called control shift candles, right? Control shift candles are simply candles with very long wicks and small bodies. When price gets to our resistance zone or our support zone and we see control shift candles, we know that price has a higher probability of respecting our zone, right? That should be one confirmation that we can be able, let's say it's a resistance, we can be able to sell. But where do we find the actual entry for that trade, right? Now this is what we do. I need you guys to make a combination of all the things that we talked about. This is how only all that can make sense to you. Do you see the way price is here, right? It's making lower lows and higher highs, right? Which shows that, sorry, it's making, let me, right. As you can see here, price is doing this, is doing that, is doing that. That's a lower low. It comes back here, right, to this zone. What that is doing, you can see that this market is bearish, right? As the market is bearish, it comes to this resistance zone, this zone here that we have marked our resistance. And what does it do when it comes to our resistance? It gives me control shift candles, right? It means the market is respecting my resistance, right? But how do I catch an entry? Do you guys remember when I said we only use high time frames to catch support zones and resistance zone to mark market direction? We only use high time frame. Now, when we say high time frame, we mean H4, D1, and 1 week, right? So now I'm on my H4, right? And I see a control shift candle on my resistance. What do? I go down to M15, right? Specifically M15 and M30. This is where I want you guys to play around. This is because there is what I call a time factor, right? When we're talking about a time factor, we mean there are time frames that play hand in hand. If you see a control shift candle on D1, right, you should go down to H1 to look for entries. And if you see a control shift candles on H4, you should go on M15 to look for entries. And this is how you find your entries. Do you remember, guys, when we talked about market direction? When you see a control shift candle on a zone, right, on your zone, if you go down to M15, you are supposed to see something like this, right? You will see that this was my resistance, right? This is how price acted. It gave this, right? Which shows that the market made a lower low, right? And it failed. It did this again. This is on M15. It failed to break the higher high, right? That will tell you that the market is changing in direction. And when it gave this now, right, it's confirmation that your market has changed direction on M15. So what do you do now? You go on M15 and you mark your resistance, your previous resistance. That is where the market is likely to reverse. And as for my case, this is my resistance. Yeah. Right? But you can also mark this zone. What do? When I come here, right, and I see control shift candles on my M15, I execute. And where do I put my stop loss? My stop loss is supposed to be here. Stop loss, right? That is supposed to be my stop loss. Where do I put my entry? This is where my entry is supposed to be. Entry. Forgive my writing. This is my first time using this thing. Entry. Right. So that is supposed to be my entry, and that will be my stop loss. It's as simple as that. When you see price approach your support and resistance zone, right, on your high time frame, now you want to look for control shift candles. And when control shift candles present themselves, you go to M15 and you want to see a change in market direction. When the market shows you a change in market direction, you look for entries. It's that simple, guys. I hope that was not very hard. So the steps are here. Identify market direction. First, mark your support and resistance zone, right? When price approaches your support and resistance zones, look for control shift candles. You are still on high time frame here, right? And when you see control shift candles, you move to M15 and look for a change in market direction on M15. I hope that is not too confusing. I want you to see that this market is going up, right? Higher, sorry, this is a higher high than this one, and then it takes out this high, right? And then when it takes out, you can see that this zone, where is it? This zone, that is my resistance zone. I couldn't afford to replay it, so let's just work with what we have. I have this, right? I have my resistance zone there, right? What do I see? I see control shift candles on that zone. Let me try to go on M15 and see if, okay guys, it's this simple, right? My support was here, and I showed you guys that we have control shift candles. What do I see? Do you see that the market direction is creating higher highs and higher highs, right? And it breaks. This was the previous low, right? And it breaks it when it comes down here. Even if you make this your low, you can see that the market, I don't know how if you can like peep through, you can see that the market broke that previous low, right? And it failed to break the previous high. And if you can zoom in, let me try to zoom in for you. This movement, right, that happened here. If you can zoom in, you can see that the market broke this high, right? Came all the way down, failed to make a higher high. And when it fails to make a higher high, what does it do? It gives you control shift candles. And you enter here, your stop loss is supposed to be up there. What do you get from that move? You get beautiful price delivery all the way, right? Let me see on H4 where it lands. Where does my price land on H4? You see that price lands on this, it drops from this resistance and lands on this support, right? It's just everywhere. So that is all on catching entries using support and resistance, guys. I hope I did not confuse you. I will create another episode, or we'll host a live session when we will talk more about these things. Anyway, I hope you are doing well, and I hope now you can find entries using support and resistance. Thank you guys so much. I hope you understood the concepts that we were talking about, because we did a combination of things. We first talked about market direction, right? We talked about support and resistance. We talked about multi-time framing. We were using a combination of H4 of high time frames and low time frames, right? We did a combination of, we used candlesticks to tell us a story of, is price respecting the zone? Is it keeping up with the zone? And then we talked about catching entries, which is the final part. But in the next video, we're going to talk about other price action methods of finding entries and exits. And we'll combine them with support and resistance. Like I said, support and resistance is the backbone of price action. So continue watching, guys. There is more to come. In the next episode, I'm sure we'll be talking about trend lines. So stay tuned and continue to watch. Thank you, guys.